Okay, Dr. Baker, you've got qualifications in bioengineering. You've been following the chemtrails. I tell you what, chemtrails is such a mystery to our audience. I mean, we see it with our eyes. When I went down to Antarctica, we went up to Iceland. We didn't really see chemtrails. We went down to Antarctica. We didn't see chemtrails. You come back to Florida, they're everywhere. You go to some places, they have it. Some countries they have it, some countries they don't. Are eyes lying to us? Is this something that's beyond natural, or is the government aware of what's going on, and why doesn't anybody just get rid of them if it's bad for our health?
Yes. So this is another very complicated, very dark sort of rabbit hole to go down, but I'll try to keep it brief. Essentially, your eyes are not lying to you, but a lot of other people are lying to you. Um, the chemtrail phrase itself, or the chemtrail word, is really a slang term for this deliberate spraying that we are seeing over our heads that is coming from various different aircraft. Most of them are military aircraft. Our own military is doing this in very large amounts, and military planes throughout the world in many countries are doing this as well. The part of the sort of psychological operation to convince people that it's not happening is to conflate it with contrails. And what contrails are is they're just water vapor that's freezing coming out of the exhaust of commercial aircraft or military aircraft as they fly. What I would encourage people to do is not to get caught up in the contrail, chemtrail, um, basically Psyop, and to understand that our military and some private entities are regularly, almost continuously now spraying overhead with deliberate pollutants. There is a lot of it is coal fly ash, which is waste products captured from coal burning plants. They used to just let that go up into the atmosphere and it would cause air pollution. But now they have a lot of that lying around that they have to dispose of. And what has happened is they have caught on the notion that in the name of climate change reduction, in the name of reducing global warming, these planes are, and it sounds far fetched, but it's absolutely true. They are flying over our heads and they are spraying us with essentially types of soot to create artificial cloud cover and to blot out the sun to reduce the amount of sunlight that reaches the earth. That's what most of these chemtrails are. They're actually very rich in heavy metals, and they're very heavy in aluminum. They're very heavy in barium, and both of these are toxic metals. There's no physiologic use of aluminum in the human body. It's only potentially toxic in large amounts. Barium is the same way. It's truly diabolical what's happening. A lot of it has to do with the UN. There was a treaty that you can look up called the ENMOD Treaty, ENMOD Treaty, that a bunch of countries signed in a number of years ago with the UN, and it's designed to be ENMOD, environmental modification. And the US signed that. A lot of other countries have signed it. And these projects, these programs are going on over our heads every day. I don't know if this was true for you down in Florida, but for me up in New York, the summer of 2020 was the most beautiful blue sky summer I can remember since I was a child. It was absolutely gorgeous, and it was one of the saving graces for me and my family and our friends during COVID because we were locked down pretty hard in New York. The reason for that was because they sidelined these pilots. These pilots were locked down just like everybody else. But of course, it came back after that. There was also congressionally funded and congressionally approved increases in this spraying that's going on during the Biden years. I believe it was approved in 2023. And I have on some of my posts some links to that. But this is absolutely 100% true. It's absolutely happening. There is a very vigorous psyop to tell us, no, these are just contrails. Contrails are real. If you have a plane flying at 40,000 feet and it's cold up there and it's spraying water vapor and other things, you'll see a trail. But that trail will be a very brief little trail and it'll dissipate very quickly. When you're seeing this spraying and you're seeing it settle down to a low altitude and haze over to create this sort of wet diaper kind of low cloud cover, and then you see all these sort of what people call now chembos, these rainbows in the clouds that you never saw 10 years ago. That's a sign that we have particulate material metals in the air that are being sprayed on us. It's really a huge problem. It's a huge health problem. There's actually, and people, if you're in Florida, your Florida followers should get on Senate website, the state Senate website. There's active legislation being proposed. Senator Garcia from down in Miami is one of the people behind this, Ileana Garcia. And they could use all the support that they could get there to try and ban chemtrails in the state of Florida. Lest anyone think that this is completely craziness, they've already passed legislation in Tennessee, and there's about 8 other states that are working at it.
Wow, that's good, because when we look on social media, anyone that posts about these particulates that are in the air that we believe are being sprayed intentionally on us and are affecting people's health, you always get fact-checked. And even your posts, I'm going to go to some of your posts and show, but you'll get fact-checked that, chemtrails are part of a conspiracy theory. And yet our lying eyes are telling us all over the developed world, somehow they've managed to coordinate this. And to me, it seems like they because they managed to do this over our heads, they then probably took this model and used it for the pandemic. I think the chemtrails have come before the pandemic, but it's always amazing how could intelligent, supposedly independent thinking people, professionals, all collude to hide something and to, foist something on the public like this. That's one of the big things about chemtrails and COVID that it just has me befuddled. I mean, can't we just get one pilot to say that he's hired by whom to spray what? Have we found pilots like this who are willing to testify what's going on?
Oh yes, there are people. So if you want to really give I'll give a link to your followers. One great website is called geoengineeringwatch.org. It's just one big word, geoengineeringwatch.org, and it's run by a man named Dane Wigington, Wigington. And Dane has been following this. Thank you. He has been following this for decades. And you get on there, and there is just absolutely, you could spend weeks going through all the documentation of this. It's Pastor, your comparison to COVID is completely apropos. We live in a world and we live in a country where if our government is doing things that they don't want us to know about, they have very, very sophisticated psychological mechanisms to mislead us, to scare us, to get us to laugh at people that are pointing things out. The whole idea of conspiracy theory, the phrase itself goes back a long time, maybe 100 years, but it really was picked up by the CIA. And again, this sounds conspiratorial, but
No, I've heard that.
It was picked up by the CIA after the Kennedy assassination. And they systematically labeled anybody who questioned the findings of the Warren Commission as a quote unquote conspiracy theorist. And from then on, anytime you question anything that is outside the supported narrative, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. The question I would ask to people is, look, if someone who is concerned about this is just some kook, why are you so vigorously trying to dismiss what they're saying? Why are you wasting your time fact checking every single time some kook puts something out there? If I said that, I don't know, that I can fly to the moon by flapping my arms, no one's going to waste their time fact checking that. Right. No one's going to waste their time saying this guy humans can't actually, they don't have the right aerodynamics, they don't have feathers, etc. And he wouldn't have, no one would bother. They bother when it's true. they bother telling you it's untrue when it's true. And when you start seeing this, and those of us who were involved in COVID, we saw this for years. Vaccines are safe and effective. Vaccines are safe and effective. Vaccines are safe and effective. Well, now 5 years later, we all know they weren't safe and they weren't effective. Oops. Now we move on to something else. So this is a playbook that they've had for many years. The psychological operations side of things is a huge part of this, and people should not be surprised when it gets this type of the bots, trolls, the fact checks, and so on. That basically tells you it's flack. You're over the target when you get a lot of flack.
So where are the honest scientists? That's what I'm wondering. Have they been bought? Were they scared? Why is it so hard to tell people? And I want to get to the goal. Like, what is the goal of spraying toxic chemicals over your own population?
So I would go to the second part first. And I would say I really encourage people to just dig a little deeper by going to Geoengineering Watch. And I happen to have spoken with Dane on 2 or 3 occasions. I don't know him super well. I don't have super connections with him, so I'm not selling anything to Dane. But he just has um, comprehensive knowledge of this. I think that there's money to be made. So one attitude is that you have a huge amount of these industrial waste products that come from burning coal and whatnot, and they used to be just released up into the atmosphere, but now they have to be disposed of properly. Well, they found an excuse to be paid to basically sell it so it could be released back up into the atmosphere again. It also takes us into the whole climate change and global warming kind of scam that we have to deal with. Um, the When I talk about the chemtrails, that's really what we're talking about with that. That's just one aspect of geoengineering. The whole geoengineering and weather modification world it's a secret world that really is super surprising. There are other modalities that are used. Um, since there were airplanes, there's been cloud seeding. Like, most people won't say, oh, cloud seeding is a conspiracy theory, because somehow that's kind of escaped the notion of being a total conspiracy theory. And there's laws on the books in many, many states, particularly in the West, regarding seeding the clouds to get rain for your crops. So that aspect of it is not even really fully, is not even contested. We also have the issue of HARP, which are these ionosphere stimulating systems. There's one up in Alaska that the U.S. government controls, and there's one in, I think, Wales, and there's several others throughout the world, and they can actually have a role in directing traffic, if you will, among weather patterns worldwide. There are other modalities too, but what has really become um, visible to everybody in late years is this increase in the spraying. The official name for it is stratospheric atmospheric injection. It's basically hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, let me show your meme, your recent post on this. You posted Delta 9, the true climate change, and explain to us what each of these things mean. One is SPX1, EIS scat, stratospheric aerosols, which you mentioned, and HARP, which you've mentioned.
Right.
And talk to us like we're fifth graders, because you imagine some of my followers, let's say in Thailand, where I was born. Many people are, I would say the majority, like we're talking 90% of the population, are absolutely convinced the sea levels are rising. We're going to lose shorelines of Thailand. You cannot convince them because they believe if it's Western science, it has to be true. So the young people are completely in one basket on this.
Mhm.
And the schools and the universities and the media all say the same thing. So how would you say to a fifth grader to understand that this might be not what they think it is?
Well, the first thing, if you want to talk about sea levels rising, then I would say, where is the sea level, even if you're young, where is the sea level today as opposed to as far back as you can remember? If you go down to the beach, is the beach gone? I mean, are the houses that were on the beach, are they all underwater? If they're not underwater, then that hasn't changed. But people have to start trusting their own intelligence and have to start trusting their own observational skills. So the first thing I would say is, I remember back in the United States, as you may remember, it was a big deal when Al Gore put out this book and movie, An Inconvenient Truth.
Sure.
And there were a lot of things that he claimed were going to happen in a very short period of time. And essentially, none of them have. There's
No.
more polar bears now than there were before. And there is, the Maldives, which is a very, I guess it's in the Indian Ocean, but it's a very flat, sort of like the Bahamas, a very flat series of islands. They were all going to be completely immersed underwater. But the Maldives are exactly the same size as they were before.
Not only are they the same size, but I think the Western countries put in an investment of, I think, $500 million to build up their international airport, which goes to show that they have no faith whatsoever in sea level rising. They have absolute faith in making tons of money on a very flat island, and they expect tourism to do nothing but boom.
Exactly. And so what people have to do is, well, first of all, I would say this to anyone who says that they have a complete trust in Western science, is that science is only useful, um, A, when it's done properly, and B, when it is allowed to be questioned and revised and fixed when we realize the error of our ways. In fact, that is the scientific process. If you say, and as far as Western science goes, you can just go back to Galileo to see how much resistance there is to allowing people to um, um, really question science. If you're in a position where you have the dominant um, scientific viewpoint, then you're at risk if your theory or what you're taking action based upon is threatened. And so there's a tremendous power struggle always in science. And we saw that during COVID. They wanted to not allow us in the United States to use repurposed drugs, which were safe, because if people used the repurposed drugs and didn't die from COVID, there would be no need for these brand new vaccines. So it's the same thing here. The justification for and this is it's again, weather modification is a very complicated there's several factors here, as this particular slide shows. The stratospheric aerosols, that's the SAI, stratospheric aerosol injection, is what we've mostly been talking about, and that's what we commonly call the chemtrails. This is deliberate spraying of particulate matter in massive amounts, usually byproducts of coal combustion, to blot out the sun, to create artificial cloud cover and to blot out the sun. And that's what we're seeing all the time now. And this has gone up dramatically in the last few years.
Let me just inject something our audience will like. The Bible predicts, strangely, in the last days that there'll be 3 days of darkness. And you've got the elites of the world spraying all this soot. Now we know it's soot with heavy metals, and that's to block out the sun. Just on this first agenda, what's the ultimate purpose?
Well, as best I can tell, it's ostensibly to lower the temperature on the earth, but realistically, as you stated yourself, with them putting huge airports into the Maldives after predicting that they'd be underwater, the stated function is not always what the actual function is. If you're someone who has a whole lot of coal fly ash you want to get rid of, and you sell it to these people, it's a beautiful way to get rid of your industrial waste. So that's one motivation for them. The second is that there is reason to believe, a lot of people believe this, that this is a deliberate poisoning, of large populations to reduce the human population worldwide. It really gets very complicated. There's also significant effort in the big agricultural companies like Monsanto to develop cash crops that are resistant to excessive amounts of aluminum in the soil. Why is that? Because they know this is going on, and they know that the aluminum content in the soil and the water is growing. So it really becomes quite convoluted, quite dark. It's a lot like COVID. COVID wasn't just one thing. It was partly to transfer wealth upwards. It was partly to strip people of their civil rights and scare them, and it was partly to make money through vaccines and so on. So it's multifactorial. It's really quite dark and quite extensive. But don't let anyone tell you it's not real, because it's very real indeed.
All right. Well, it sounds demonic to me, and it sounds like it's playing into what Revelation has predicted 2,000 years ago. We have ruling elites who don't really care about us, and they are just making money and getting more power for themselves. They're even trying to control our stratosphere. So they're dumping this. I can see the motive now. If they're just getting rid of industrial waste, I can see the motive of depopulation, because they keep scaring people that we're overpopulated.
Mhm.
I think I'm one of the most blessed, ministers. I am very well traveled, been to over 55 countries, and I can tell you, being all over the planet is very empty. It's got plenty of space, plenty of resources. The population could go up, I think, double, triple, and the earth could very well handle us. But they've been trying to scare us with this. And so the depopulation agenda is so demonic, it's hard for the normal person to comprehend that they would want to do that. So they're spraying this stuff. It's not good for us. I meet a lot of couples and families with children that have birth defects. I'm beginning to be suspicious that when I was young, we didn't see this so much. Obviously always disease, but it's like good Christians live well, they try to eat right, and yet so many health problems. Can we link any of these aerosols, injections to any specific disease at this time? Do we have enough evidence?
What I would say would be the simplest way to link something, and I actually wrote a letter to the Florida Senate in support of their bill to end geoengineering spraying in the state of Florida. Um, Two things. Number one, the aluminum is an overwhelmingly common part of this sort of fallout that we get from the spraying. And as I said before, aluminum is only a toxin in the human body. It doesn't act as a coenzyme. It doesn't act as any other positive function as, say, iron does in the body. It's purely toxic. And it's well known to cause um, dementia type problems,
Okay, so
particularly
dementia.
dementia, yes, because it was proven in patients who get hemodialysis. Part of the process years ago involved exposure to aluminum. I'm not sure if it was part of the machinery or what. And there was something called dementia. I mean, excuse me, dialysis related encephalopathy. Encephalopathy means brain disease, and they identified that was due to excessive aluminum exposure. So aluminum definitely contributes to dementia. It's been attributed higher levels of aluminum in patients with Alzheimer's, with other types of dementia, with Parkinson's disease, even in patients with the autism spectrum disorders. So there's no question that aluminum is a neurotoxin. It's also a lung toxin if it's inhaled. And of course, we're going to be inhaling it if they're spraying this over our heads. Aluminum workers previously were known to get a variant of asthma from being exposed to aluminum and breathing aluminum. And just in general terms, poor air quality is obviously well associated with both pulmonary diseases in general, asthma in particular, and also now increasingly it's a risk factor for onset of dementia. So what we're seeing here is basically deliberate pollution of our atmosphere. And it's a secret kind of process that they're doing, or semi-secret kind of process that they're doing, and they're doing it ostensibly to block out the sun. Now, blocking out the sun sounds like the worst idea in the world to me, because the source of all life on the planet is due to sunlight, correct? I mean, we get all of our food initially from plants that use photosynthesis to create food, and then it goes up the food chain to animals and to us. So, you know, the whole concept of blotting out the sun is so perverse and so diabolical that we should dismiss it on first glance. But in this strange and sort of wicked world that we live in, this is what our governments are doing to us.
Walk us through these other weather modification machines here. What are these things? What's the SBX1?
So let me take a half step back here with these, because I again want to direct people to that website, the geoengineeringwatch.org, because there are folks that know more about these other subjects than I do. But if I may kind of generalize, there's multiple different aspects to weather modification. One of them is perhaps the simplest, is good old-fashioned cloud seeding, and that's usually silver nitrate, believe it or not, is used to literally fly into a cloud, spray it, and it induces rain. And this is used in the Western United States and elsewhere to create rain when there hasn't been rain. Then,
Let
of
me
course,
say, for the Thai watchers, the king of Thailand, the former king, was an engineer, and he popularized silver nitrate spraying because Thailand is a very agriculture-based country, used to be. And so he was, I think, considered a hero, right? A scientific avant-garde king who brought that. And I think there must be something different between provoking rain versus the stuff that they're injecting that is causing birth defects and dementia. Would you agree with that?
100%. What I would say, though, is look, if you believe that they're deliberately making it rain with silver nitrate, why would you deny that they're spraying this other stuff out of the sky, out of the airplanes? You know, it's clearly happening, and there's no question about that. One may have a place, but the other one has no place whatsoever. And we just need to have a little bit of nuance here, and it's frankly not that nuanced, really, when you get right down to it. There's a big difference between a targeted cloud seeding and this worldwide spraying of soot and other particles. The other areas that I can touch on, and again, I refer people to the website because it really just has so much more detail than what I can do here. But the other area that is of interest is we talked a little bit about the HARP, which is basically trying to stimulate or heat the ionosphere, which is I believe, an even higher part of the atmosphere. And what they can do is manipulate weather patterns that way. So move weather at a global level in different ways. This is dangerous because they really don't know if there's ill effects to the upper atmosphere from doing this. They claim that it's all experimental, but it's not experimental. A lot of it is, some of it is designed as a weaponry type of device. The third thing, which I won't say what SBX1 is because I'm not sure exactly what that terminology is, but these large dome-shaped items that you see there, a lot of those are NEXRAD technologies, NEXRAD, and they're radar technologies that can be used to send out frequencies to change cloud patterns and to change cloud movements. So when nowadays we see instead of seeing the nice fluffy cumulus clouds, we see so many of those sort of scalloped flat clouds that look like someone's sent a frequency through them, and that's exactly what they've done. And a lot of people feel that this is being done in addition to that's not a bad example there. That a lot of people feel that this is sort of a what's the word? Kind of complementary process with the spraying. So you spray to get the low level clouds, and then you send these frequencies through to kind of spread it out into these patterns. That's not a natural cloud right there. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and I never saw anything like that until the last 10 years, 20 years, and now they're everywhere.
This is part of the problem is you have to have some age and experience to tell people the sea levels aren't rising. These cloud patterns are not normal. There is a world without all this man-made intervention. the more natural we are, the more we go back to the way God made things, the healthier people were. But yeah, sorry, please continue.
No, absolutely. I agree. It's a great clarification here. The ISCAT, I'm gonna step back on because I don't want to misstate it. But again, that's some more, I believe, more upper atmosphere type of um, activities. Now, the other thing about the NextRad and so on is there's some capacity with these systems, which are all over the United States, to move bodies of rain producing cloud mass. And there's a lot of concern that for example, the Hurricane Helene striking and going to the Asheville, North Carolina area and staying there for days may have been manipulated with the NextRad to hold in position for an extended period of time in a particular area. I'm not expert on those areas, but that's something that um, is I believe to be true. And the other thing that's interesting about these, one of the other psyops, we talked about all the fact checking and all the bots and all the people saying you're a conspiracy theorist. Another one is saying, well, this is all experimental. But you and I know when this guy is absolutely littered with this stuff day after day after day, that's not an experiment. That's a program. That's something that's happening all the time. So we're getting systematically lied to, and it's a real issue. And I would encourage people also just to look at that UN treaty and so on, because it's available out there. These things hide in plain sight, Pastor. You know, people just look up and they say, I wonder what that is. And then someone says, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. And that's usually enough to dissuade them from pursuing things further.
Dr. Baker, you're one of the most informed people about this. I want to pick your brain on solutions. You know, our program, we don't like to stay on the problem. We want to get to solutions. From scientific legislation point of view, how to end this? Is this something that President Trump can just sign an order and end it, or is this at state level?
It really, to solve the problem in the United States, I believe it would really need federal action at a very high level. And we're seeing, you know, I think the new administration has done tremendous things in a short period of time in many ways. But this is something that the Department of Defense is involved in, that multiple NOAA, the Aeronautic Administration, is involved in, NASA is involved in. In fact, I believe it was the EPA. It was the Federal Aviation Administration, NOAA, which is the Aeronautic Administration, Ocean and Aeronautics, basically the weather, right?
Yeah.
And NASA put out a joint statement that they're going to start looking into persistent contrails. So again, this is more gaslighting of us. They're saying that basically the contrails, they're still trying to make us think that there's something different about the jet fuel or something like that, which is not the issue. They are spraying us with soot, and they're saying we're going to start looking into this. This came out right around the inauguration. So it's kind of the last gasp effort of the previous administration to gaslight us into thinking there's really nothing going on. So these various federal agencies are all in cahoots with this. And we have to understand that, and it would take very high level activity at the White House level, and even then, you'd have to get them to actually stop. You know, and you see how difficult that is. It's gone through as a friend of mine who's big on the COVID and vaccine problem says, she told me, the federal government, when they're doing something really bad, they like to spread it out over multiple agencies. They don't want it to all be in one office, because then it's easier to shut down. It's easier to blame people. It's easier to. So there's at least 15 federal agencies that are involved in this, as far as I'm aware.
That's an amazing point, because you could see that if all of the, you know, say foreign intervention, foreign bribery is all going through one agency, USAID, Trump can just say, hey, let's freeze all foreign aid for the moment, right? And that just shuts it all down. But you're saying they've gotten so smart at deceiving the public that they've spread this out in such a way that it's hard for Trump to handle it and just stop it. Is this something that RFK Jr. Is this under his portfolio? All those agencies? Can the NIH say, "Look, it's a public emergency. It's a health emergency. We've got to shut this down"?
I think that one way that people could do this is get in contact with your senators, get in contact with your congressman, get in contact with your, if you live in Florida, get in contact with Ileana Garcia and the people in that are putting that bill out, and just really support that heavily. If you're in Pennsylvania, there's strong legislation being proposed in Pennsylvania. I believe the state senator's name is Mastriano, but you could find that fairly easily on social media and really support these people. But I think that at the federal level, it really needs to go through. I would say it needs to go through people like Lee Zeldin is now in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency, and I would say that you really need to say this is clearly in violation of the Clean Air Act, which we have in play. So that would be one way to go about it. So I really think people need to get a hold of whoever they voted for and say, this needs to stop. There is, and you can point to the state legislation. You can say they've already passed a law in Tennessee. They're passing a law in Florida. They're passing a law in Pennsylvania. They're doing work in other states. Idaho is involved. Even Rhode Island and Minnesota, which are blue states, there's attempts at legislation. So the notion that all of these state legislatures are fighting a conspiracy theory is absurd. It's patently absurd. We just need to get past that. And if anyone says, well, that's clearly this guy's nuts. Well, what on earth are 7 or 8 different states trying to pass legislation about something that doesn't exist? That's absurd.
I really wish if you could, because we want people to go to your X account. We'll put that up. Could you help us and list all of these states, post them sometime for your followers, so we can know which states are onto this, because it's bipartisan, it's blue and red states, it's anybody with lungs, anybody with cells should be concerned that, and anybody eating food, right, should be concerned.
100%. Anyone drinking water, that pretty much covers the waterfront, doesn't it? I mean, this affects your air, this affects your water, this affects your food. As someone I was taught many years ago, you can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Well, thereafter, this is going to mess up all 3 of those.
All 3. Wow, this is really helpful to know. Please go and check out Dr. Clayton Baker's X handle, CJ Baker MD. There it is on the screen, and I'm sure he's going to update all of you in different states what's going on. From a scientific point of view, can you say that it's too far gone, that the soil's been so polluted that it's going to take generations for the food to get back to normal?
I know people who are pessimistic about it, but I am optimistic. I think that you have to be optimistic. I think that we have to say we need to stop this now. We know that the planet has a tremendous capacity to heal itself, and we know that human beings have done terrible things to the planet in the past, and it has healed. So I choose not to take a pessimistic view on that, but I do think we're doing tremendous harm to the planet, and we are doing tremendous harm to human beings, and we don't have forever to stop this.
If I give a little bit of a plug for the mission field. I believe Christians should get out to the mission field. A lot of the countries out there don't have this. They still have good food. They don't have all of the different birth defects and dementia and things like that. And we talk about Goshens. A lot of people try to have a Goshen. It's a biblical term for getting into a safe place when the government goes completely tyrannical, which the Bible predicts when the Antichrist comes. That's going to eventually come. We're not there yet. We're fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for our food, air, water. But eventually something's going to happen. And I say, you go to a country like Thailand, you go down to the south, there's that sliver there where it's like the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. The air is completely clean. There are 2 oceans flanking on both sides. The food never runs out. I just think Christians ought to get out into the mission field, take a look at Goshens that are abroad. We look at things like that as a ministry. You can go look at goshenlake.org, okay, if you're interested in looking at Goshen, safe places that are not infested and infected and polluted with chemtrails and things like that. We'd love to take you out and go do missions out in Thailand is one of those places. All right. Lastly, for a personal, personal solution, what happens if you have been so toxified by the chemtrails and the bad food and the bad water? Are there some natural solutions that you'd recommend people do to start detoxing themselves?
That's a great question. I don't have off the cuff kind of solutions. I think one thing that I stress with people, and I know that Secretary Kennedy with the Maha movement is really pushing towards this as well. I have tried in general to recommend to people, number one, to detoxify your life to what extent you can. And the first step is what you're taking into your body, obviously. So your food, your water, and so on. I think that to a greater extent, and in past years, I'll admit I was somewhat skeptical of this, but I think that if you look at foods that, for example, don't have any GMOs in them, I think that's preferable to foods that do. If you look at um, you look at your what types of food you're purchasing, where you're purchasing it from. If you can purchase it from a farmer's market, or you can produce it or get it from a local area, I think that's preferable to something that you're getting that's been production type of farm. I also think that it's really valuable. A lot of people saw a lot of weight gain, a lot of increase in alcohol use, a lot of drug use, a lot of depression during the COVID period. And I think that that is something that a fair number of people have said, I'm going to react against that. I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to recommit myself to physical fitness and to health and to maintaining my weight in a healthy way. I think all of those things are very important. Two other areas. The second would be, or the second to last would be with your medications. You take a really good hard look about which medications you need, and you only take the ones that you need, and you forego the ones that you don't. And that's something you can have an honest conversation with your physician. But many people who are on multiple medications can get off at least some of them. The last one is, I think, spiritually, and this is really more your area than mine, but it's really important to redevelop a relationship with God. We really need to say to ourselves, we are, and again, this is your area, not mine, but we are creatures of God. We are God's children. We are not these owners of this planet, and we can do whatever we want to with it, or we will just let our superiors of our species do whatever they want with it, and we will just follow along. We need to get back to it, and maybe that goes to your Goshen concept to a certain extent. We have to understand that we are at most stewards of the earth, not owners of it, and we need to have some humility and some great gratefulness to God that we've been able to live here and to experience things, and not take this attitude that we can just plunder or do what we choose. And so that's something that I really stress. And I think that there's maybe some of a renewal of that in the United States, at least, and with this new administration, because I think there is hope in some areas that there wasn't a couple of years ago.
Dr. Baker, you couldn't have put it any better than that. That's exactly our position. Is it does take humility, which comes from faith in God. Countries like Australia and a lot of Europe, they've been, so secularized and so anti-God that there's no humility left among the politicians. They set themselves up as little gods, and they are really failing the population and hurting the population. So faith in God really is the solution to this. It will give us better leaders, better policies, better lifestyle, better spirituality, and ultimately an eternity with God. Thank you so much for this. I want to have you back on to talk about another area of your expertise, which is on the mind of many people, about COVID and the vaccines. Please come back and join us soon, okay?
I would be pleased to do that. That would be a pleasure. And to be honest with you, I'm still learning, as you can probably tell. a lot of this stuff about the geoengineering. I'm still kind of I'm halfway down that rabbit hole. I'm not all the way down there. In the area of the COVID material, I'm further along, so I can give you more, perhaps more definitive information. But I hope this was helpful.
Our audience will love that. Thank you. Well, God bless you. For many years, I've been advising people to prepare by having at least a month's worth of food and water. And I've tried several long life food products. And I've chosen one that I think is the most organic that I can find for myself and my family. And it's called New Manna. So if you're looking for long life food, it's called New Manna. And we have a very dedicated link for this, newmanna.com/Pastor Steve. All right? Their tubs will last 25 years on the shelf, and I not only store it, but because I find it's good quality and it's organic, I actually eat it when my fresh produce run low. So if you use the promo code Pastor Steve, you will get 10% discount. New Manna is owned and operated by Christians who support this ministry and other ministries when you purchase it. So that's why I'm willing to let you know that's what I use, right? newmanna.com/Pastor Steve. I hope that will help you to prepare at least for a month, at least have something. If the internet goes down, the grid goes down, something unexpected happens, at least a month. That will keep you going. Then you can decide what to do. You're going to bunker down, then you need more. You're going to move, then you got some supply. All right? Okay, God bless you.